Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 1. Hello, Potteroonies. Welcome to another episode of the Film vs. Film podcast. This week, as Bullet Train is hitting cinemas around the world, we are talking Brad Pitt films. And we have guests again, people. This is very exciting stuff from the Real Thing podcast with 2 E's. I see what you did there, guys. Jack and Nick, how are you?
Good.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. And I have a confession to make, people. From episode 1, I have been talking to myself the whole time. I'm joined by my imaginary friend, Boaz Dix. How are you, sir?
Hi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Man of few words.
Important words.
Interesting that we will be talking about an interesting movie to do with that.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. We may be breaking many.
Yeah, the first 2 at least.
So, guys, Jack and Nick, tell us about your podcast. Where can we find you? I've listened to a few. It sounds very detailed on your movies.
So we can be found on iTunes, Spotify.
All the major platforms, I think, pretty much.
Yeah. And we basically review classic movies that are kind of off the beaten track. We review the movies in detail, and then we have big roundabout discussion about what we liked about the movie, how, or more importantly, how to get into a movie that might be hard to get into. We want to not only kind of in a way educate people, but we want them to see and understand the wider variety of movies and hope that they enjoy it as much as we do. We've been doing this now for a little over a year, and it's been very successful for us.
Awesome.
Our main goal, I think, is to take films that, as Nick said, are either, a little off the beaten track, or that we think is a film that might be a difficult one for people to get into, like older films or Shakespearean films or musicals.
Yeah.
We'll try and touch on anything, but the objective is to try and see if we can help some people that feel they're ready to transition out of the typical Hollywood fare into, a little bit more artistic filmmaking.
Awesome. Is there an episode you would recommend to people?
We just recently did an episode on Gojira, the 1954 original Godzilla.
Nice.
That was a lot of fun. Your favorites, Nick?
Some of my favorite, we covered our first Alfred Hitchcock movie, North by Northwest.
That was fun.
We did Sergio Leone, It's Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Our first episode was one. But again, that it's with that idea that, 2001 is historically a film that is difficult for a lot of people to access.
Wasn't it a big flop when it came out? Or a lot of people didn't like it? Yeah,
it was a commercial flop. But but the critics knew. They knew that it was something special. It's funny that we should mention this because, they felt the same way about Fight Club when it first came out.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd recommend any particular episode more than others, but those are some of the ones that we've done that have been a lot of fun. We'll do old, new, we don't care. We've done Midsommar and Hereditary by Ari Aster, so we'll go anywhere.
So the new movie that's coming out, Bullet Train, that we're relating this episode to, when it was first announced and Brad Pitt was in it and David Leitch was directing it, I thought, oh, cool. This is going to be a very hard-nosed, Atomic Blonde style movie, very serious, bloody, violent. And when the first trailer came out, I was like, oh, this is different. This is very comedic. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, it looks very interesting. A bit different for... Yes, he did Deadpool 2, which was a lot of fun. So I think he's very much leaning into more of the comedy side with his movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you guys think about Bullet Train? Are you excited about it or trepidatious?
It looked very stylistic, kind of a very fast-paced movie, almost like the glitz that they show in like a Fast and Furious movie, in the sense that it's just very fast-paced and
It looks like a lot of fun.
very stylish. Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It doesn't look like it's going to be anything too
serious.
Yeah.
Thought-provoking.
No, yeah. Just turn your brain off. Just have a good time.
Yeah, just ride the wave.
Yeah, ride the train. I think it looks interesting. I don't think it looks like special enough that it's going to stick with me, but it does look like it's a comedy action film, probably like Mr. and Mrs. Smith or something like that, which he's done before, but probably with less romance. I don't see any sort of romantic lead. So, but I definitely like the style. I like Tokyo, and I like the fact that it's set in Japan. I mean, Tokyo is always a colorful city to produce.
It's such a fun city to watch action scenes in.
Absolutely, I agree with that. It just looks so like it's colorful and like futuristic and what have you.
Yeah.
And so if you're having a fun, light-hearted action scene in Tokyo, it's like the perfect city to have it.
Yeah, you've got giant jumbotron screens that are like size of a building.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we decided to go with our pick first, Boaz. So we picked Killing Them Softly from 2012. Andrew Dominic, he previously worked with Brad Pitt on the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
Oh.
I always find that was a bit of a mouthful, that title.
It is.
I love that movie. Kind of connects with your choice as well, because Fincher worked with Brad Pitt on Fight Club for the second time as well. So it's kind of similar here. Dominic works with Brad Pitt for the second time on this film. But I mean, getting to that choice, we were thinking Fury, Ad Astra, and Assassination of Jesse James. So we've eventually went with Killing Them Softly. I did find this one quite a difficult choice, because there's a lot of good Brad Pitt films for me.
Yeah.
So just initial reactions, what did we think of this one?
I thought the characters were pretty good. I don't know if I liked all the scenes in the movie. Like, basically, I thought the characters were written very well. The scenes that the characters were in, I don't think were written as well as it could have been.
Okay. Interesting. Jack?
I pretty much got to concur with Nick. I thought the characters were great. I thought the acting, if the one thing that this movie had in spades was cast. Great cast. Brad Pitt, James Gandolfini, Ben Mendelsohn, Richard Jenkins, just good choices.
Yeah.
Just good. Scoot McNairy, they were all great. And unfortunately, but the writing and the direction was not there to back it up.
Interesting. Obviously, I forgot to mention, we picked this as well because we hadn't seen it before. Well, I hadn't seen it before, which sometimes we go for films like that. So, had you seen this before, Boaz?
Yes, I had, yeah.
So what's your initial reactions to this one then?
So, I still do quite like it. I think with me, I resonate really well with the direction. Like, I think there's some really interesting visual choices and ways that scenes are framed. Again, like some really good transitions. I love me some transitions. I think as a concept for the script, it's an interesting concept. It wasn't like, you know what I mean? It's not that satisfying.
Well, I really liked it.
Yeah. No, I genuinely did really like it. I do like it. I do like this film.
And also, we picked a different movie because, like, well, there's no way in hell we're going to beat Fight Club, so let's pick something a bit different.
Yeah.
So,
I think they missed an opportunity by not fleshing the relationship out between Pitt and Gandolfini more. I think there was a lot more that could have been explored with those two characters, and it wasn't done.
So I think as well, like a lot of the cast feels quite one-dimensional as characters, but I think this is probably on purpose because I think as it's very clear that this film is it's meant to represent something, and particularly when it keeps going into speeches by the president and talks about the economic collapse and elections, it's definitely meant to be an allegory for exactly what happened and how it was dealt with.
Yeah. And that was what I meant about the on the nose messaging.
Yeah. So it's very on the nose, and it's very allegorical. So I think that doesn't give you. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. One, it can be very, very clever if you understand the allegory. So I understood some of the allegory, but it does feel like I have to watch a documentary that sort of spells out exactly who was who. Yeah, so I can appreciate that more. But I think if you're doing allegory, then you can't make the characters too three-dimensional, because then otherwise the allegory can be very easily lost. You know, if they're too well-rounded, then they're not representing singular concepts.
So, Boaz, what happens in Killing Them Softly?
So Killing Them Softly is about basically a mob heist that goes wrong. These two criminals called Russell and Frankie, they decide they're very short on money, so they decide to rob a mob card game, which is
by Ray Liotta.
Yeah, which is run by Ray Liotta, called Marky. And, you know, they think, okay, if we rob his game, he'll get blamed for it because he's robbed his own game previously. So they do that. Everybody blames Marky, you know, thinking he's robbed his own game. And the mob send Brad Pitt, whose character is called Jackie Cogan, to he's an assassin sent to sort of sort this out, find out who robbed the game and, you know, kill them. He finds out who it really was, but he kind of argues that they should still kill Marky. And so it's basically just him mopping up all the people involved in the card game. And yeah, that's basically it. Like the plot is fairly basic. Yeah. So it's fairly straightforward. It's definitely on the nose. It even starts with discussion about just after the financial collapse and Obama talking about it.
But like you said, the allegory is actually interesting if you can follow it all the way. But like you said, I found it difficult.
Yeah. So I feel like if you were very, you know, because unlike say for example, what's that other film that talks about the Big Short? The Big Short kind of goes and it really explains everything. I think this is a plot that if you had no idea, it's just a plot about a card game, and it does constantly mention the recession. But I think if you kind of were in the know, you know, it doesn't spell it out, but if you were in the know, I think you would get the intricacies. But it feels like you need like supplementary watching to really appreciate it. But, you know.
So directing then, I found the opening shots fascinating as we hear like Barack Obama giving a speech, but the credits interrupt what he's saying with this really like jarring music.
Yeah, it sounds like a horror movie. I always found that opening incredibly peculiar.
Yeah, you see Frankie looking like very worse for wear and, you know, walks out of this tunnel with litter everywhere. So immediately the film is telling you that there's clear opposition, as you were saying, Boaz, of what we're seeing on screen and what the media is telling us through the movie about this world. The film very much, in a stylistic way, I guess, puts you in this world through the directing, I would say. I really like the little scene where Dylan and Kenny think Marky Ray Liotta's character stole the money from the first card game. You know, they turn up to his little house, and the camera stays on the outside of the house, and they beat up Marky, push him through the window, pull him back, and then end up throwing Marky out of the back. It's just like a simple like panning shot, basically following the sound effects of the fight, because you can't see what's going on until the end, and it's really stylistic and efficient. You know, they could have built a set to have a grander fight scene there, and there's no way you could fit like a camera crew in that house. So Andrew Dominic, the director, must have been like, well, let's just do a simple panning shot from outside the building, job done, move on. And it keeps with like the black comedy tone too, instead of doing like a full blown fight scene. So I quite like the efficiency in that little sequence there.
It also, I kind of also like that because even though it's a big deal for some guy to get the crap beaten out of him, under interrogation. So you would usually film that scene with like multiple cuts, multiple close angles, like sort of choreography.
Yeah.
But to just do like a gentle pan, it's kind of like, this is just another day for these fucking people. Like, this is not important. They beat up guys like all the time. This is not a big deal. I think that definitely tells you something about the business they're in.
But then like the tone of Marky getting beaten up the second time shifts very graphically, in my opinion. When these characters, Stevie and Barry, turn up and follow Marky, Trapman, Ray Liotta's character, the camera's all pretty smooth. And then when the first punch lands, it's all kind of like handheld. And we've seen this type of thing before, but what made it extremely violent for me was these crunching sounds. I don't know if you noticed that after each impact.
The wet crunching sound, yeah.
It felt really horrible to watch and hear in that, and it just felt like, oh, God.
We'll talk more about that.
Did that scene, like, make you wince, people?
A little bit, yeah.
When a scene like that is done effectively, and when I said that I didn't feel the direction was there definitely were some interesting things that Dominic did that I enjoyed. I wished I had seen a little more on the character side, but yes, that in particular was very effective.
I also, what was it? You remember when he like vomits on him as well? That was pretty fucked up.
And Ray Liotta, can we just talk about how Ray Liotta was the perfect choice for that role?
Yeah.
I mean, he, towards the end of his career, I would say the last, 10 or so years of his career, he really locked down that old gangster who was just fucked up and just couldn't get a break and couldn't do anything right. You know what I mean? It's like he locked down that ne'er-do-well gangster that just can't seem to catch a break. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there is something a bit depressing as well. Like, certainly this is one of his last films, and he's just getting beat the shit out of.
Yeah, as far as how it handled the violence and that scene, the crazy car scene was just it just gets hit from every possible angle.
I just felt that was from a different movie. I was like, this is just tonally so different to the rest of the movie.
It still looks incredible.
I just felt like Andrew Dominic just didn't turn up that day, and Zack Snyder just was sat in his place and just like, Zack, do what you want, you know. Cool. I want to use lots of slow-mo here.
No, but I think the difference in direction makes it stand out more, because I would say I think the word that I would have for most of the direction, except that scene, is minimalist. You know, it's not huge amounts of cuts. It's not huge amounts of pans. It's not, it's really a lot of steady cam and a lot of tracking shots and a lot of kind of mid or far away shots and stuff like that. So it's very, very minimalist.
Mm.
And then you compare most of the film with that scene where it's like just everything under the book, like super slow motion, fucking, loads and loads of cuts, rain, cars, operatic music. It's like just throws everything.
That one scene where he's getting shot at is just amazing. It just all of a sudden it's like you said, it's very much out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know. That definitely sticks with me just because of how different it is from the rest of the film. I don't think that's particularly a bad thing. I think it just sticks out a lot more.
Get Fast and the Furious dropped in the middle of Goodfellas.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Not that it's as good as Goodfellas, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. It's just, I was just trying to figure out why this decision was made. Was it just because Brad Pitt's character hasn't like hit anyone in a while, and you get this like elation feeling from his character? I don't know, but I don't think that was the case.
The other thing that felt to me a little too manufactured, I guess, was the big ending of "This is America, God damn it!" You know, that whole thing was kind of like, okay.
I quite liked that.
Yeah, I kind of liked it as well.
I must admit, I think it does tie the whole film together for me. Obviously, we're not Americans.
Yeah. Oh no!
But
as far as what it was saying, absolutely. But it was for me. It was just a little bit like, okay, it might be because I don't know. Things are just so politically weird right now.
Yeah.
I think I kind of get what you mean. Like, if there was, that scene is so like over the top, and I guess because the character of Marky is somewhat important, because it's his card game. Necessarily, Dylan doesn't want him dead, but it's like he's been kind of pushing for this, Brad Pitt's character, and so I guess it's kind, it's symbolically quite important, yeah. But I would say like. Yeah, there's not much catharsis in it because he doesn't mean much to Brad, This isn't personal.
It's just a job.
Yeah, it's just a job. Maybe if they had more interactions or any interactions, he has no interactions with, so if they had some sort of heartfelt interaction, or what if that scene was actually him doing it to James Gandolfini? Because that's the only pure bunch of interactions you have, them talking. What if he had to whack James Gandolfini and, he had to do that? Then you'd probably get a lot more to...
That's why I said I thought that there was a lot more opportunity to explore with those two characters.
Yeah, I think maybe there would have been a lot more catharsis in that scene. I thought it was cool, but yeah, not as cathartic, because you're like, yeah, he's getting murdered really crazily, but is there any emotional payoff to that?
Yeah.
Then when you have the hit on Squirrel, it's directed with no flair whatsoever. No. It's completely the opposite in terms of style. Yeah. Loads of wide shots. You see the first gunshot from really far away with no slow motion at all, and yet it still felt quite thrilling and tense. And it fitted perfectly with the tone of the rest of the film. So I definitely preferred that scene to the slow-mo one.
Well, even the final death with the last thief, Frankie, and how that was just it's a mid shot, from the back of the car. They're just talking. Oh, you got to do that. Yeah, I know. And then get rid of the car. Yeah, I know. And then just bang, shoots him in the head. All just in that. And again, it does fit the tone of the film, very minimalist and very, just matter of fact. So I thought that was cool. One scene I actually quite like, from a directing point of view, is when Frankie and Russell are doing heroin.
Yeah.
I really like that. And I think more people should direct heroin scenes like that, druggy scenes. I just thought it was great.
Nick and I were talking about that scene. I felt it felt a lot to me like the scene where the guy loses all his money at the card game in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and he stands up as the Stooges, and you start getting that really wobbly look behind him and everything, his head's all messed up. But to me, it felt a lot like that.
That's my favorite scene, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say that because it's a kind of way of depicting a bunch of people being on drugs that you don't see enough. And it just makes a lot of sense. It's like he's there talking, talking. From his point of view, he's really slow, the camera's on him. His beads of sweat really slow. And then a first-person view of just basically Frankie dissolving into light. And it's just light.
Yeah,
and it's like he sounds like he's underground or something. Frankie, he's, and then he wakes up and he sees, and that light turns back into, I just love that. I thought that was really, really cool.
It's just a great way to because it's essentially an exposition scene of just forwarding the plot, and it's just done so creatively.
Yeah, I just think it's just a creative way to spice up. Again, just an exposition scene where they're doing drugs, and you just make that part of the the depiction, part of the camera work.
Yeah, I just like how that film was that scene was kind of cut together. A lot of the shots on Mendelsohn were very slow, blurry, and stuff. A lot of push-ins and push-outs from his perspective on Frankie, and then kind of cut together with normal shots as well of Frankie just Russell, wake up! Come on, man! What did you say?
Yeah, what the fuck did you say? Yeah.
I guess the favorite scene, I guess, would be where Brad Pitt had killed Ray Liotta's character. I mean, it was a little over. It was a little. I mean, I will admit it was overdone, and to me, in a way, it didn't fit as well as it should have. But I like how they did it, even though I probably would have done it different. I would have shot that a lot differently.
Yeah, we were talking about that when you went away.
Yeah.
And we were kind of talking that it felt like it was from a different film. Well, I thought that. But yeah, stylistically, it's a lot of fun, I guess.
My favorite shot was actually when Ben Mendelsohn gets arrested.
Oh, okay.
When the cops come and take him away. I loved the way that looked. It worked perfectly, especially when in the context of being put together with that other scene that Boaz was talking about earlier with the music, when they had done the heroin. As far as my favorite scene, actually, I wish I could say it was the scene between Gandolfini and Pitt, but they didn't take it as far as they could have.
Really? Okay.
With those two actors, they had a lot of opportunity to really do an incredible scene. almost to the level of Pacino and De Niro in Heat at the coffee
Yeah.
shop.
What?
Like, it could have been that level.
What, the first scene or the second one?
First.
The scene where they have the big talk about where he's like, "What are you doing? You're crazy. You can't keep doing this. Don't worry about me. I got it," and all that. That big scene.
Oh, okay.
When he's trying to decide if he's even capable of doing the job that he needs him to do. I felt that could have gone farther, but the scenes that I actually enjoyed the most were the ones between Brad Pitt and Richard Jenkins.
Oh, yeah, they were cool.
The guy who's got boots on the ground versus the executive up in the office, deciding what's going to happen and talking to the guy on the street, and the guy in the street's going like, "Yeah, no, you can't do it like that." He's trying to educate this guy, and he's like, "But is there a way to do it less messy?"
Is there a way you can kill them really, really softly?
But I think that was the best parts of Brad Pitt's character was the interaction with Jenkins, because both of them were, like Jack just said, were coming from 2 points of view. But the way they would describe things and talk and their interaction was like, they weren't friends, but they were pretty civil with each other. And for me, that was probably the best interactions. I mean, Jack's right. I think they could have done a lot more with Pitt and Gandolfini. Just, even if it wasn't just that one scene, if they had spread out a couple of interactions throughout the movie, I think would have been good too.
So, directing score, Jack and Nick, what are you going for?
You know what? I was going to give it a 6, but I think after talking to you guys and thinking about a lot of the things that you said, I think I'm going to bump it to a 7.
Yeah, I would have said about 6.5. So yeah, 7 makes a lot of sense.
Cool.
Sounds like 7.
Yeah, I think there are some really interesting directional choices here. There's one particular scene which I'll talk about in screenplay, which I really liked. Just the simplicity of it. There's some great simplicity in this film from Andrew Dominik. So Boaz, shall we say 7.5? 7.8?
7.6?
Okay. Right, people. Screenplay for Killing Them Softly. I found a lot of these characters really disgusting human beings. Like the car journey Russell and Frankie have about having sex in prison. Russell jokes about doing it with a dog. He says it's not recommended. That's what I hear.
Yeah.
Then he talks about having sex with a prostitute, and afterwards the prostitute says, "I'm gonna kill myself," and they both kind of wave it off. Russell doesn't even react and even finds it funny, and Frankie just says it doesn't mean anything. They all say it. So when they rob the card game, you're not on their side really at all. These guys are idiots. Visually, it helps when the sawn-off shotgun has been sawn off so short you can see the fucking shells. Plus they're wearing bright yellow washing up gloves.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that line where Frankie's like something like, "I'm robbing them wearing condoms and holding a fucking grenade." He's like, "This will kill everybody in the room."
That's why the scene is so tense for me, because there's a strong possibility these guys could get killed because they're idiots entering a room full of experienced gangsters.
All of these guys at the table are looking at these two just going like, "You idiots have no idea how bad we're going to kill you."
I think it's fucking hilarious as well how the kind of, especially because as the film keeps going on and you see how spineless Frankie is, how he's like, take out your pockets, everything, get everything on the fucking table. You're like, and these guys looking absolutely furious. You're like, you're gonna fucking die, man. You are gonna die.
I'm surprised that they showed any kind of restraint because there were at least 3 guys that were kind of moving. They had their hands under the table and they're looking at the guys. And I thought to myself, in any other movie, in any other situation,
this would become a gunfight.
Those guys never would have made it out. And I'm surprised that they did, because the other thing is in some movies like that, they always have some guy that is maybe at the exit or the entrance. So I'm surprised that they were able to back out and kind of run for it the way that they did.
Yeah, I was half expecting them to get shot in the back,
they were only confident because they had the guns. They had weapons. Other than that, they didn't stand a chance.
There's no way these guys can make it out of this alive. There's no way.
It was a small enough room that I'm surprised that they were able to do what they did.
Yeah.
It was almost like the guys were sitting there looking at these kids going like, shit, I respect these kids even just for trying this, even though it's stupid.
But I'm just watching Dead Men right now, they're going to get whacked.
I also kind of like that where Ray Liotta is sort of saying to Russell, you're going to be in trouble. Just take out your friend and it'll be fine. And, you can sort of see him considering it. He's like, I could. But he doesn't.
I really liked Brad Pitt's performance in this and how he's written, because at the start he feels like he's on like this equal playing field with everyone else, that the financial crash is affecting everyone. Like, he complains about the inconveniences of doing the job. He expresses how things should actually be done. Then when he meets James Gandolfini's character, this disgusting, very dangerous time waster, basically, in Jackie's eyes, Pitt's character, he's not intimidated by him at all. Later, there's a little scene where he walks across the street to meet Frankie, and there's like a shooting down the road in the background, and the camera doesn't really make note of that at all, doesn't spot it out or anything, and Jackie just doesn't flinch once. And even when Frankie is driving so fast after the hit on Squirrel, you feel like Jackie is still in complete control. And then at the end, when Jackie counts his money and it's not the agreed price because of the recession, you have this amazing shot following Pitt out of the restroom, and he becomes the most intimidating in that scene, I would say, that ends the film. So I love how the film like subtly builds up this really intelligent, scary character so subtly. So that was my favorite part of the film, I would say.
Because I think I like one of the last. It was just something very simple as like a writing bit, but one of the last times they talk in the car, and he's explaining what he's had to do and the expenses and everything, and the driver or whatever just says, because he's trying to light up a cigarette, can you please not smoke in my car? And he just fucking ignores him and just lights up.
He just completely ignores him.
Well, I don't think he completely ignores him. There's a moment where he pauses, like, are you serious?
He kind of looks at him.
I'm lighting my cigarette, So what do we think of like Brad's like story arc in this? I mean, was it very satisfying at the end?
He doesn't really have an arc.
I would say so. Like, I don't think he's not that.
He's not a deep character.
Intimidating at the beginning, but compared to that at the end, I'm like, whoa, you don't want to mess with this guy.
Yeah, okay.
Did you guys feel that or not? Or am I reading too much into it?
Yeah, I think it gets more threatening each scene.
I kind of got from the beginning that he was the guy you don't mess with. I don't feel like he really changed much. I think he revealed more of what he was. I don't feel like he shifted really, but I think you just saw more of him. But for me, he was that guy from the old days who was still relevant, but he's reached that point in his career where it's just like he's no-braining it. He's just going through every day, every job like it's no big deal anymore. And it's just, it looks like he's kind of just doing it just to do it.
I think for me, I didn't feel like he was too intimidating from the start, but the film reveals how intimidating he is as the film progresses for me. I thought that was really subtly done.
I thought he was pretty good too. I think he, just like what Jack said, where I think he got more intimidating and we got to know him better as the movie progressed. He presented kind of like, to me, that guy that comes into a certain situation, says, okay, this is a mess. I'm here to clean it up. I've kind of have an idea of how to deal with this. So this is how we should do it. You guys just don't seem to understand how this is coming across to other people. And here's my solution. Here's what we're going to do. Because he obviously had a difference of opinion with Jenkins' character, and just was like, well, you see it from up where you are, but this is what people are talking about. And this is what we got to take. This is how we got to take care of it. And this is what's worked for me.
I wasn't too fond of like the social commentary stuff in this film at first. We kind of talked a little bit about it because it did feel quite forced at times, because you felt like the film is slightly pausing in moments, especially in the first half of the film, so the viewer can really hear what's going on the radio or the TV. But I felt by the end where Brad Pitt is talking to Richard Jenkins demanding his money, implying that, you know, the Thomas Jefferson quote, all men are created equal, is like a myth, and says America is not a country, America is just a business, now fucking pay me. That scene, like, you know, wraps up the film really nicely to me in a pretty brutally honest way. So I think, as Jack and Boaz said, it does lean a bit heavy on the audience to begin with, but I did feel that last scene was pretty good.
It definitely was. And certainly for guys like this.
Yeah.
Certainly for guys living in this world. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that is their reality. Yeah. I had fun. I enjoyed it.
So, you know, if I were to do anything, I would probably like put all of the, you know, president's speeches and economists and like more at the end, or do that more subtly, because especially as it just comes out of nowhere sometimes, or everybody is watching stuff to do with the economy. Everybody at every point in time.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a bit much. So I would have toned that down and maybe just saved it for the end. Yeah, because it just feels intrusive. And then at the end, it makes sense. And he's watching it, and you hear the whole speech. And then Brad Pitt is like, that is absolute bullshit. They don't give a fuck about you. Nobody gives a fuck about anybody here. Care about getting paid. That's essentially what he's talking about. And so I like that. I would say one thing that I quite like that I haven't touched on most is like the acting from the fellow who plays, is it Russell? And just his character is like one of the most disgusting human beings I have ever seen in my life. And he did have me like chuckling quite loudly, like many, many times, with just the insane shit that he would say. You remember he was talking about he was going to have sex with some girls or whatever. And he was like, he goes, you know, like they're ugly, you know, they're not good enough to rape or something like that. It's like, what the fuck, man? He just says like the most insane fucking shit, just like randomly. I kind of agree with his friend, you know, because what was it? Like Frankie is showing this guy to his boss. And his boss is like, this guy is a fucking idiot. You're a liability, you know?
That's like Squirrel's like second line or something, you know? He says it immediately.
You just have to see this guy once and know he's a fucking moron.
I guess this film is really impressive in just creating really despicable human beings and just exposing, you know, what toxic masculinity can be.
I also thought it was funny, like a lot of his, like his ideas on how to make money. Do you remember he was explaining he's gonna, like, he's stolen dogs and he's gonna take them across the country and sell these stolen dogs.
The stealing dogs is pretty good.
Yeah. And then when he makes enough money, he's going to buy a rock of crack or whatever and then start a business that way.
That part felt very Guy Ritchie to me.
I also like that bit where they meet up after he's done like selling his dogs and they're going to, you know, do some heroin. And he just like starts tussling, Russell starts tussling Frankie's hair. He goes, "Whoa, what the fuck is that on your hand?" He's like, "It's dog shit." Yeah, that was funny.
And it was funny too because no matter what, when they got together, he'd always smell. He was always commenting how bad he smelled.
Yeah,
like it's like you could just watching him, you could smell him. You know, you're like, God, this man looks filthy. You know.
I almost feel like you could sense it just by watching. You know, and maybe you just said that, but by watching this movie, you're like, yeah, he just looks like a guy that would smell. I mean, he made me so uncomfortable because he was just that kind of like you said, despicable kind of guy. But it didn't seem to bother him one bit.
He's not self-aware at all.
Not so much. The first time Ben Mendelsohn really impressed me was probably Rogue One. But then after that, I really started paying attention to his performances, and he's really. That guy's good.
Well, I mean, compared to, you know, the very, you know, militaristic Imperial and Rogue One, this is like night and day. This is like, you know,
Right. And then, of course, the Skrulls in Captain Marvel. And
he's a good actor.
Yeah, he's a very good actor. I got to say, this was probably the most impressed with him I've been. He did a great job in this.
So, favorite lines, people? Mine is "I was drinking before you got out of your father's cock." From James Gandolfini.
Yeah.
That's a really good line.
Jack, you got one?
My favorite line is the line about the hooker who wanted to kill herself after, and they said, and he goes, "They all do. They all do that." that was just like, I was like, what?
That was
funny. Yeah, so I guess my one is like the titular line, where he's like, you ever kill anyone? He's like, no. Can get touchy-feely, emotional, not fun, a lot of fuss. They cry, they plead, they beg, they piss themselves, they call for their mothers. It gets embarrassing. I like to kill them softly from a distance, not close enough for feelings. I don't like feelings. I thought that's a pretty cool line, or a series of lines.
Yeah.
And, obviously it's got the title in it.
No chance to start doing a Miller's Crossing. Please look at your heart. Look at your heart.
Yeah, exactly. Look at your heart. So I like that, and and I do actually like the rant that he goes on at the end.
So, Jack and Nick, what's your score for screenplay?
I don't know. What do you say?
I would say about the same, about a 7.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's what it lacks in. I think overall cohesion. I think it makes up for in great one-liners.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a trade-off there. To me, it's not a great story, but there's a lot of great lines in it.
Straight 7.
Yeah.
Cool. Boaz, what should we go with?
Yeah, I'm actually feeling exactly the same, so I'm thinking a 7.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I just like the fact that it's a nice, taut, short gangster film you don't see very often. I thought it was pretty clever for me. I like, the story arc for Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm the one that's quite up on this, but so I would want to go like 7.8.
Wow, really?
Or 8.2.
Wow.
There you go.
In my head, I like the directing more than I like the script. And so I think that's the only reason, because I like certain shots, and that's why it sticks in my head.
7.5?
I'll meet you halfway, 7.5. Yeah, I'm not happy with putting it higher than the direction.
Oh, we're being very harsh today, people.
Yeah.
Acting, then. We talked a lot about the acting, but I just really like Ray Liotta in this film. I think it just took me straight back to Goodfellas when Ray admits that he robbed the first game. He does this incredible laugh straight out of that film, and the scene, "Do you think I'm funny?" scene from Goodfellas. And it was just a nice, nostalgic moment for me.
Yeah.
I know exactly the laugh you mean.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just took me straight back to Goodfellas there.
Yeah, I thought that was brilliant.
Good stuff.
I think also like just how helpless he was when he was getting beaten as well. That's like night and day, because he is like is begging. He's like, please, like, listen, guy, I just didn't do anything, and they're just kicking the crap out of him. But you're like, Jesus Christ, this is horrible. You're just beating this guy up.
I was kind of surprised he didn't try to get a punch in or a block or something. Like, I know he would have been beat the way he was, but I'm surprised he didn't put up some kind of defense, even just for a little bit.
He looked like he was smart enough to not do anything to make it worse.
Yeah, I think that's probably the thing. Yeah,
that's what I got from it.
Because he already knows he's been warned once. If he put up a fight, I'll just fucking shoot him.
Yeah.
Let's talk more James Gandolfini, because I think for me he's my favorite performance in this film by far. It's just a really interesting, subtle performance. He has only has two scenes, but in both scenes he's so compelling because he's this embodiment of toxic masculinity. The way he talks about and to women is really abhorrent. You're just like, God, what disgusting thing is going to come out of his mouth next? But there's an element of his performance where you do feel slightly sympathetic towards him, that he misses the good old days, because you can clearly see his life is in the toilet. You can read that on his face so clearly, and that he's really suffering, even though he deserves it. But you can't take his eyes off him in those scenes. I think he's just extraordinary in both those scenes.
Yeah, I do especially like his scenes, especially how he can he switches on a dime from trying to be cool and collected to being almost like he's going to burst with anger. Even the guy has got the alcohol wrong. He's You fucking, you know what I mean? Where the fuck are you driving from? You know, like, did you take a plane? Like, what the fuck? To, you know, he does feel like he's gonna sob or whatever, and then corrects himself. So he does feel, you know, and I like even in the second scene with the hooker as well, because he goes from like happy and cute to like pissed off to quite paranoid, to like very agoraphobic. He doesn't want to go outside, to fake confidence. So he's like, you do feel like he's wrestling with like a lot in his head, and that's coming out pretty well.
Yeah. I think as soon as we meet Gandolfini in that second scene in the hotel room, you're like, yeah, he's not going to help Brad Pitt in the second hit at all.
There's going to be a problem. Yeah. I agree with both of you. I think Gandolfini was amazing in this role. This is the kind of role that we've come to know him for doing so well, which is that the tough guy, that toxic masculinity, that the tough guy, but who is cracking under the pressure underneath.
Absolutely, yeah. Like he's trying so hard to keep the facade over, you know.
Yeah, it was very visceral in how it came across, and Gandolfini is just very, very good at selling that. And it was interesting to watch Brad Pitt talking to him and listening. Did you ever see Michael Clayton with George Clooney?
I just saw that probably a week or two ago.
There's some conversations that go on between him and Tom Wilkerson, because it's kind of a similar relationship where Tom Wilkerson is the old guy that's been around since the old days, and it's kind of a similar thing. But Clooney, he's got that very similar, you know, he's the guy who's on rock solid ground trying to keep this guy from drifting out into the open sea. And he's just trying to hold on to him, you know, and it feels like that's kind of what Brad Pitt is doing here, is going like, okay, this guy's my old friend. I want to be sympathetic. I want to help him out, but what's it going to cost me to do it?
I kind of wish we had seen more of it, even if he had attempted to help Brad Pitt's character, you know, and failed, and kind of realized, you know, that he's kind of past his prime, or he's somehow showed that he kind of struggled. But I think him coming to the realization that he wasn't going to really help in that second scene was probably good enough. Like Jack said, I thought he did very well. He really knows how to play those kinds of roles, the Tony Soprano kind of thing. But this was not, I mean, obviously it wasn't Tony Soprano, but it almost felt like maybe this could have been maybe Tony Soprano years later, a little bit, where he'd done a bunch of stuff and he just couldn't get out of his own way after a while.
Yeah.
Tony Soprano as a lower level lieutenant.
Yeah, I think even, what was it? They could have added an extra scene. I think even by way of the script, they definitely could have.
Yeah.
I would have loved to watch his setup, because when he goes to the driver and he's like, you know, I think he's out of it. He's no good. So we'll just pay like a prostitute $500 to like humiliate him, and then he'll hit her, and then he'll break his parole. And that's apparently what happened off screen. I think the film does this a bit too much, where it tells and doesn't show, and I would have liked to see that. They like set him up where he fucking ruins his life. I would have liked to see that scene.
I think that's a big part of how this movie stayed under 90 minutes.
Yeah.
You know?
Jack, what's your favorite performance?
Gandolfini, I think, gave the best dramatic performance, but personally, I just love Ben Mendelsohn.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree.
Yeah.
I think he's the most entertaining performance there. It's like,
he's definitely the most entertaining and the fun to watch, but Gandolfini definitely gave the most meat on the bone, for sure.
I would probably go with Gandolfini. I mean, not saying Mendelsohn was bad by any comparison, but I like Gandolfini's, especially the first scene where they're sitting together, and like Jack said, if they could have spent just a little more time, it could have been kind of that, like a scene from Heat. But I just like the interaction with him and Pitt, and that to me was my favorite. I thought it was the best.
Yeah, there was good chemistry between them.
Yeah. Score for acting, Jack and Nick. What are you going for?
I'm going to give acting 8.5.
All right, I was going to give it an 8, but to submit both of ours together, yeah, 8.5.
We can do 8.25.
Boaz, what should we go for acting? I think it's pretty damn good, the acting.
I think it's really good, yeah. You want to go a high 8?
Should we be daring and give the film a bit more respectability and go 9?
Yeah, let's go a 9. Yeah, I think the acting is pretty flawless.
I like this film.
The acting is really outstanding.
I would say definitely the acting is the best element of this film by far.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go a 9.
I think, especially Gandolfini, I think the guy is extraordinary. So, yeah, solid 9, I think. Right, let's add up the scores then for Killing Them Softly.
I love how there's a theorem to this.
Yeah.
That's great.
Very scientific.
Yeah, there's actually an equation.
Killing Them Softly gets 46.6. So I don't think this will be tied. That's it for part 1. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 2 to see who wins. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.